Nigeria. The speculations of religious organizations laundering money to sponsor terrorism is not new in Nigeria. With no strong backing or proof, it only remains by word of mouth, and with little or no evidence to prove such allegations. Now, with the latest development of 13 billion naira laundered and 7 billion naira traced to a religious organization shows the EFCC boss, Dr. Ola Olukayode, means business. And he has come to work and lead by example and also ready to swing into action where the need arises. Indeed, proactive implementation of effective and coordinated policies against corruption remains the best guarantee for public security, economic development, and effective functioning of public and private institutions. The calibration of Commission's prevention strategy seeks to promote proactive deterrence and greater inclusivity in terms of participation of all stakeholders. It seems the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission is committed to show how corruption, whether in ministries and agencies of government, in the ivory towers or the private sector, could be prevented before it occurs. I am being joined by Lugard Okonogbo. He is a development analyst, and this is Inside Today. I am Jumai Manson. Stay tuned. You're welcome back, and if you're just tuning in, this is Insight Today, and I'm still looking at the speculations of religious organizations when it comes to laundering money to sponsor terrorism. Like I said, I am not doing it alone. I have Mr. Lugard Okolibo, and of course, he is a development expert. Mr. Lugard, good afternoon. Thank you for being a part of the program.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me.
Now, looking at this, of course, we know it is a very sensitive issue at hand when it comes to religious organizations and laundering and terrorism, all three encompassed into one. Now, will you say, is the outcry of EFCC boss not going to end up as noise? And if it does, in your own opinion, is this based on the background that similar hopes have been raised in the fight against corruption, especially when it involves highly influential people? What makes this one different?
Well, in my view, I think the EFCC chairman just not long he assumed office. And we should know that the issues of corruption in this country takes different dimensions from time to time. I think this should maybe be one of the first time, apart from the time that we had a pastor was involved in money laundering for the former EFCC boss, that's Ibrahim Magu, if you remember very well. So this is not just the first time. I think, well, information available to him allows him to be able to push, to say, oh, this so-and-so thing is happening, and let's give it a nip in the bud. So in my view, I'm not thinking that that would be like one of the far cry that he would just cry and just end like that. Let's give him benefit of doubt on this particular issue.
Giving him benefits of doubt.
Yes.
Okay, I completely agree. We should give benefits of doubt. Now, we know that religion is a very sensitive matter in Nigeria. It's very, very sensitive. When you mention religion, whether it's Islam or Christianity, it's very sensitive. So you have to thrive slowly and softly. Now, will it not have been better to quietly complete investigations and institute persecutions rather than come to the press, like what the EFCC boss did?
Well, I want to say here that coming to the press, I can't really hold brief for him, but the fact remains that if you follow processes of issues that comes out public, different medium of communication have been taken. In most government establishments. I know that for sure. And having worked in an office whereby I had opportunity to sometimes bring up some things to the press, I know at first you have to do internal consultation. You have to communicate. You have to wait for the other party. So wherein it gets to a certain extent, then some things definitely come out public. So I've also seen instances where you see somebody who is a director in a ministry is under investigation. And it's not even known to the staffs in the ministry that something like that is happening. So processes and procedures are taken prior to public pronouncement on certain issues like this.
All right. Looking at it critically, how committed is the Nigerian judiciary in this fight against corruption? Now, considering the current battered image of the Nigerian judiciary, which we've all seen, and the alleged restraining order not to investigate, is it instructive?
Well, that's, to me, may be a big question because I'm not a legal practitioner as a development expert. As a development expert, I think where we begin to study the issue of corruption from is to look at what is the economics of corruption. And I remember some years ago, I think that should be in 2016, when I had the opportunity to be involved with some selected youth groups. We were talking about the issues of corruption in Nigeria, and the president, former President Muhammadu Buhari said he's here to fight corruption. If we don't fight corruption, corruption will kill the country and all that, and all that, and all that. But I want to say here, I remember in one of those conversations, my push was we need to study the economics of corruption. Now, what's the economics of corruption? You see a young man overnight, don't hammer. He's driving Jeep, nobody bothered to ask. You go to church, someone gives fat offerings, donations, and it's celebrated. I worked in an office whereby one day I got a call from the king of my village, and he said, oh, I will need you to come back home where we give you chieftaincy title. Without actually finding, just because I worked in that office. And I asked a question that I work in CBN, does it mean that the whole money in CBN belongs to me? So we need to begin to look at the economics of corruption. How do people, what makes people to go into corruption? How do they get in? Why is it that even the rich still want to get more corrupted? The poor ones want to get more. And I've seen instances where young people will say, oh, these old men, they've all gotten well through corruption, and now they want to fight corruption. They should allow us to take our share before they start fighting corruption.
All right, you know what? Looking at it as a development expert, now, in your own view, how committed is the Nigerian judiciary in the fight against corruption? How can you wait? How do you see their move as a body? How committed do you think they are?
Well, it's so sad we have a judiciary today that has been polarized. However, that's not to say that the entire system is completely bad. The judiciary is doing its best, in my own opinion. But the fact remains that certain influences affect certain decisions that have been taken within the judiciary space. And I want to say here that what comes to the judiciary is the output of what has interplayed before the judiciary. Now, I want to say this. Now, you have an office where you have, for instance, a director of procurement. You have the director in charge of a project, and certain things happen there before EFCC begins to investigate, and then it now gets to the judiciary.
Okay.
So you see that we need to begin to readdress our architecture in fighting corruption. And what that stands to mean is that, you see, sometimes you blame the judiciary. It's because we felt that, oh, that is the place where the poor masses will get justice. But the fact remains that certain fundamentals are still wrong in our country that makes the judiciary incapacitated. But
don't you think the judiciary has a major role in playing in all of these issues at hand? That is why many individuals in the society actually look up to the judiciary and also blame the judiciary when matters are not subject to what it is at hand.
Yeah, judiciary is broad, I must say, because you see, the judiciary will operate within the confines of the law. Now, you see, I once had an occasion. I have a friend who called to the bar for many years, and I sat down with him sometime. I said, why is it that the judgment was like this? And he said, that is what is in the book. So the judge will do in accordance with the law. But that's not to say that there are no instances of influences, or there are no instances of bias and all that. That exists. But what I will begin to plead for is for us to see that we are in a democracy, and democracy is about development. Democracy is about diplomacy. So we begin to look at how do we get all this and begin to work to have a sane society. But unfortunately, I will always say it here, the country called Nigeria is built on a faulty foundation. And so when you begin to continually build without really addressing the faultiness in the foundation, then we begin to get it. We will hardly get it right. So for the judiciary, yes, the poor masses want to look up to the judiciary. But the fact remains that certain things are still very, very wrong that twist the hands of the judiciary.
What happened to this notion that says you and I can make a difference? Despite the faulty foundation, you and I can make, it takes you and I to make a difference. What happened to that notion?
Let me give you a different analogy. I once sat with some youth and we're talking, and guys said, as they say, the country don't spoil, make all of us kukuma spoil too.
No, wrong.
So that when I look at, oh, I'm stained, you are stained, okay, so let's start cleaning the mess. So in my view, I see it from that perspective. But the fact remains that we all need each other to get things right in this country.
True.
We all need each other to get things right.
Now, let's move over
So
to...
for me, that's a conversation of the National Orientation Agency.
Truly.
So change begins with you.
Begins
with me, or begins with you, or begins with all of us. But the fact remains that those who are pushing this thing, to what extent are they living up to that standard? That becomes another big question.
A norm for the day.
To get answers.
Now, how independent is the EFCC from political control and influence, and how secured is the leadership of EFCC from manipulations from the powers that be? Now, is Olukayode prepared to sacrifice his seat for the right thing? You know, this is against the background that has predecessors. Remember his predecessor who spoke out against some allegedly corrupt people who ended up as minister while he got the booth?
We've always had promises of people who are chief executives that they will do their best. The fact remains that, in my view, I will call it, you do your best and leave the rest to God. That's just the sincere truth. Now, I will tell you a situation. You see, I'm a research person, and as a development expert, I've seen a lot when it comes to issues like this. Just 4 days ago, someone was given an appointment as an aide to one of the presidential aides. And the first thing I did was to question. I said, why give this person this position? And they said, he played a key role for them. And I always know that the role that guy will always play is always dirty. So you find out that in a situation where we have a country where those who promote the tenets of democracy, they are not living up to the standard. Where you come to a campaign ground and before you know, you see more than 10,000 people being mobilized. Somebody took care of their vehicles, transportations and all that. Nobody asked questions. So how do people get into power and not influence the governance? Because, you see, for you to get political power, you belong to a political party. Our political party, what are their mandates? What are their vision? What are their goals? Do we have, what is the ideology of political parties? Why should somebody wake up in the morning, leave PDP, and join APC, and nobody say something? And in the middle of the night, he's also in another political party. So you see, all of this interplays because the way someone gets political power, also he uses that to influence the governance system. And so that's why you find out that even when we have people who are committed and trustworthy, that want to do the right thing, sincerely speaking, they are faced with a lot of issues. I'm a victim. I once had a situation where we came down and said, look, I called my boss, I said, this thing must stop. We can't continue like this. It's degenerating. And he said, look at, well, you know, some of us pass through this road. We have done this before. And sometimes when we want to change the narratives, we have been attacked that we have been beneficiary of this structure. And so why do you want to destroy it now? And if you try to want to destroy it, not destroy it, you want to do the right thing, it's seen as destruction. And I was a victim.
But let me come in. What happened to the slogan, if you cannot beat them, join them? Where would you place that in all of this?
For me, I have a fourth one. If you cannot beat them, you join them. If you cannot join them, you leave them. If you cannot leave them, you use them. Yes, you have to use them. Now, using them means that you must belong to the system. You must get in and begin to influence the system gradually. Now, imagine if I get in and I'm able to, because I'm in, I'm able to bring 2-3 persons in.
Of your kind?
Of my kind. And gradually. Now, you see that we are bedeviled with a lot of societal issues. So even people you think that are trustworthy, when they get there, they do the alternative. I can only speak about myself. I've had instances where I got an appointment, I was asked to take a personal assistant. He did totally different. In short, before I took the person, I asked my wife, how do you see this person? Because I don't want an issue. He said, oh, this guy is a good boy. And lo and behold, he committed a lot of atrocities.
Oh, wow.
So you find out that sometimes you ask, why do people behave the way they behave? So these are questions that we begin to ask ourselves. So it's a very, very complicated country that we are. And I will never stop saying that book, maybe some time ago, maybe because of such conversation, we need to look into it. Nigeria, the traded ideology. You see someone in APC in Kano is sponsoring somebody in PDP in Bayelsa State. So when they come to the National Assembly, they dine and wine. And the poor masses are busy insulting themselves on social media. Just 3 days ago, we saw Boala on the television with President Bola Ahmed Tinubu taking photographs. And somebody said yesterday, the guy don't clear a way for himself. That's the country we are. So the question you asked, with all the things he was saying against the sitting president, I'm not saying former president, and today they are both taking pictures in France. And yesterday he was in UK and he was taking he was on an interview. And so he began to ask, such a person, when he gets into an office of the chairman of the EFCC, what do you expect the person to do?
That will be food for thought. Let's quickly go on a short break. Inside Today, we'll be back shortly. Don't go anywhere. You are welcome back, and if you're just tuning in, this is Inside Today, and we're looking at a very sensitive issue that has to do with terror financing and also tackling the source of money laundering. Of course, we know the recent case of EFCC with the allegation of religious organization laundering money in the guise of sponsoring terrorism. And of course, I am not doing it alone. I have Lugard Okonigbo, who is here with me, a development expert, and he has been throwing more light when it comes to questions of laundering, when it comes to EFCC, when it comes to individuals, when it comes to the organizational body as a whole, and of course the youth as a whole, focusing on the EFCC and the current issue at hand when it comes to billions of naira that has been laundered. And of course, Mr. Lugard, it's great to still have you on the program. Now let's throw in more light. How different is EFCC now from what it inherited? And let's look at the EFCC boss. He has raised the alarm about saboteurs within. We've heard about that there are officials who go behind and are part of this corruption that plays in the EFCC. So how different is what we see now from the predecessors of EFCC?
Even with predecessors, there are saboteurs. Everywhere there are saboteurs. That's the truth. You see, the fact is that where we have a system that different social issues. Now, reward system within where we work have a role to play. You have instances where people who are boys of the orgas at the top, they get accelerated promotions. And we have instances where people who does the job, they are not even promoted, and others are. You have people who are sycophants. We have establishment where some persons will not even come to work, or a department, and yet they even get promotion than the people who even come to the office. So you see, all these indices have a way they play in the success of any organization. So the issue of having saboteurs in the system is not just peculiar to EFCC. It's a generic thing across boards. Ministries, department, agencies, even with, it's just that it's lesser with the private sector and maybe some development. Even within the development space, I've had instances where I have to question some things. I say, even with all this chat, when they talk about this thing, we are this, we are that. So we mean that internal, these things are still there. So we see more of talk than action. In a country where it's more of talk than action, what you expect is not too different from what you see with the EFCC. Number two, we should know that there are people who you always see in any sphere as cabals or the gatekeepers. They are there. Even when I worked with a very superior boss and he was given an appointment, they told him that we have the allies that he must respect. And I remembered one day when we went for a meeting and they needed to be paid their transportation. The first thing he did, he said, oh yeah, come. This set of people, make sure you pay them first before others. And I was like, sir, but some of them are not here. He said, that's not your business. He said, if you don't settle these people, even you as you did here, you won't leave this place. So the chairman just came on board. Sincerely speaking, there are people who have been there for years. They have more understanding. They have certain controls, whether you like it or not. I've had the opportunity of talking to a minister of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, and I told her clearly, I said, ma, you are the honorable minister, but I can tell you, you know less than, I think in a whole, you may even know just 40% of what happened in the ministry. My sister, that's the truth. Because you have somebody who has been in the system for 25, 27 years, and you are just coming in, and you think you know the whole system. It's not possible.
No, it's not.
So saboteurs comes in different categories. From the clerk who carries your documents. Yes, the clerk, even the secretary that receives letter. They are all saboteurs. They come in different angles. They won't greet you. Just yesterday, we saw on media now, the Honorable Minister of Women Affairs. I don't know whether you've seen it. The letter of invitation for the husband that want to do birthday.
Okay.
Yes. And you see that letter, it was addressed to ministers. So in my view, I'm sure that all the honorable ministers of the Federal Republic, they will have a WhatsApp group.
Of course.
And so she may have posted it there. And from there, we didn't know what happened. We can't trace how did it become now a public document. At some point, I was even looking at it. Could it even be the secretary, or could it even be the person who went to dispatch it?
Or it could be among the ministers.
Or it could even be among the ministers.
Of course.
That is the power of the social media that we have today. So you can't even trace, you can't even track who actually did so and so a thing. But for me, I felt this would have been a confidential because it's more or less addressed to all ministers. That means, what that tells us, my sister, is this, that there could be other sensitive information that is not made for public consumption that will still fly like that.
Definitely. Definitely. No, now, still talking about saboteurs.
Yes.
It's very important. Now, of course, the EFCC boss, he has raised the alarm about them who are within. Now, how has he addressed this, especially to facilitate, success against a very sensitive issue that has to do with the involvement of religious houses in aiding money laundering for terrorists?
Yeah. I think maybe I didn't complete the first question. Saboteurs within, yes, and you also have the issue of
money laundering.
The money laundering
being very sensitive. Yes,
yeah, with religious bodies. Let me say this: Abuja is a place where you have a lot of prophets. Abuja is a place where you have native doctors wearing the dressing clothing as pastors. I've always asked one thing. I said, why is it that Abuja is so filled with so many prophets? You ask contractors, they say, I won't talk to my pastor. I won't talk. If they are not talking to their pastor, they are talking to their prophet. And I've had instances to see that one of such prophets is even a native doctor in his village. But in Abuja, he's a prophet. And I ask, what makes him a prophet? Because he sees and tells you what will happen tomorrow. And when it happens, he becomes a prophet. It's not different from a soothsayer, or neither is it different from my uncle, who is a native doctor in the village. But in Abuja, you have to take that package name, prophet. So, if you have such people having religious, like what is religious
in quotes,
then take it or leave it. We have those who are righteous, doing right, and we have those who are unrighteous.
Under the guise.
Under the guise of religious institution doing the wrong thing. So we should not just be carried away to say, oh, religious, and then we begin to attack it. No. We have sheep. I mean, we have wolves in sheep clothing. Mm-hmm. Even in the Bible days, we had Judas Iscariot. Among just 12 disciples, Jesus Christ still had Judas Iscariot. How much more a whole country like Nigeria? So let's not too be carried away. I mean, you say religious house.
You know, just for clarification, the FCC boss, he didn't come out outrightly to say whether it was under the umbrella of Christianity or Islam. He just said, in quotes, a religious organization. So let's be clear on that. There's been any press briefing.
It's cross-cutting.
Exactly.
Malam. Yes, even the
it's cross-cutting, yes,
true. Of course.
Yes, it is.
You still have it there. Mm-hmm. So it's not just, even the African traditional religions. That's why I said native doctor come into Abuja to become prophets. And the ones that cannot do that, if they belong to the Islam, they become Afar. So they are all there.
Oh, yes, of course.
And the fact remains that we have those who are righteously doing the right thing. And we have those who are doing the wrong thing.
Very true.
Yes, of
in
course.
all
So
sectors.
if they had opportunity where someone will come and want to use them as a structure to launder money, they're involved.
Okay.
We've seen pastors that do fake miracles. So if you could do fake miracles to get what? Money, fame, and now somebody is bringing money without you doing miracle. I mean, it's a full cash altogether. It
is. All right, we know that proactive, preventive measures to frustrate corruption is indeed the right way to go.
Yeah.
And now, what are the preventive measures that have been put in place? And what is the assurance of adherence to these preventive measures, if indeed they are one?
Preventive measures have always been there. I wouldn't know how much you have done. I mean, you have had dealings with ministries. I deal with ministries. On a particular day, I met an assistant director working on a file. I saw it, I looked at it, I said, sir, una no will give these people money. After all this stamp and sign, from minister to PAMSEC, from PAMSEC to deputy director, director to deputy assistant director, comes down to chief, the document will come back with all the memos. What will be? First line, I'm directed to acknowledge receipt. I'm directed to convey the response of the Honorable Minister. The ministry recognizes your activity, which is in line with the mandate, and appreciates you. The third paragraph. Due to paucity of funds, we regret to inform you that the ministry will not be able to support your request or provide support for your request. And so, now, that was the outcome that came out of a letter that someone was following up for almost like 3 months. But you see, the point I want to drive home is this. When you look at the letter that the person wrote, when you count the number of people who minuted on that document, it's almost like 6 persons. And finally, it now came with a letter that when they called the lady to pick up the letter, and the lady picked up the lady said, therefore just tell me from the one, say, they're not going to do anything now. Why allow her to pass through all this stress for almost 3 months, only to come and give? She almost felt like, destroying that letter. Now, what I'm trying to explain here is this. Such bureaucracy in the process in civil service was to allow check and balances to track not just letters of that kind, but also issues of corruption when it comes to financial dealings. But you now see a situation whereby someone will be accused that he stole $20 billion, 20 billion naira, or 5 billion naira. Abba, one person cannot just commit that crime. So I think one of the preventive measures we begin to address in civil service and in every other system is to look at what roles does individual plays in the entire process. Because it didn't just take one person, like the case of Better Edu, for instance, now. And yeah, Better Edu, Better. I told them, somebody wrote, somebody did, somebody treated, somebody did. All of them should be brought to book.
Exactly.
Until we begin to have such a clean system, we won't get it right. We will not get it right. So when the person knows that, okay, he will be the victim. Then the next day, the other person feels that, okay, that other person doing, nothing happened to him, so the person is free to continue. So we need to begin to address such preventive measures and treat individuals who are involved in that shame. You understand? So it's not just a situation like the situation we have today. If the president presents a speech and everybody claps, if there's an error, who suffers it? The director or the deputy director who typed it. That is wrong. It's not the director that typed. The director directed somebody to type. Yes, he or she must have played a role. Every person involved in that should be queried.
But it depends on who is delegated to a particular instruction.
Yes, of course. You see, there is delegation. There is somebody who does the checking. That's our system. You must get it. It's not just a private sector. In private sector, you can delegate and know. The chain of communication is faster for you to be able to say, oh, this is where things get wrong.
True.
But in civil service, it's actually not really like that. So where we want to deal on issues of corruption like this, I think it becomes holistic to deal with, not just being selective. Because that's why you see that in most instances where one person is just being fired, it's seen as selectiveness. Don't be surprised that the other day you saw people saying that they want bring back better I do back. Because to them they feel that it's selective, that there are other people that were involved.
Other prominent individuals who are supposed to be in this same table.
So when you have a system where some people are selected and some are fired, then you will hardly get it. Right.
Now, looking at this critically, like I said, it's a very sensitive issue because it has to do with religion and it has to do with religious organizations and, of course, the EFCC and terrorism, which is involved. Now, are Nigerian religious bodies, or let's say organizations, money cautious? Or is this how religious organizations operate around the world? Or is it just in Nigeria that we have this sort of issue?
Well, it's not just peculiar to Nigeria. It happens globally. It happens globally. That's the truth. It takes two to tango. We've had instances, there are instances of churches abroad who comes here to establish, to have their process here and be able to also form synergy and get one or two things done. So it's not just peculiar to the case of Nigeria, per se. Maybe because this one came out, a lot of things happens behind the scene that both of us don't even know.
Very true.
Yes, of course. So it's unfortunate that people have to take the cover of religious body to, I mean, the reason why people are even, talking about it, we are even talking about it because we see that the religious body should be people that are respected, that should be looked up to, that should serve as a guide.
Role models.
Role models for others. But yeah,
unfortunately.
Yes, of course.
And now looking at this now, the religious organizations, now do you think, in your own opinion, they do not have enough government regulations?
Well, I think that we need to strengthen the regulatory purview from the side of the government. If you remember some years ago, the Financial Regulatory Council, FROC, under the leadership of the former, now I think the man in charge of investigating the CBN activities of Emefiele's administration, that's Obaze, Mr. Obaze. When he was Paul Obaze, when he was the executive secretary, I don't know the title, the chief executive officer of Financial Regulation FROC Council of Nigeria. And he said, he came up with the leadership structure. You remember that incident where I think the Redeem
yes, I remember.
That if you have stayed for so years, I think
there was a policy that was out for all churches to adhere to. Yes, I'm very much aware.
That was like a copy from what happens within the banking sector of the time of Sanusi. When Sanusi said, if you are MD of a bank, GMD, you've stayed more than minimum 10 years, maximum 10 years, you have to exit. The whole idea was to allow certain persons
and re-inaugurate someone else for that position.
So I think we need to also begin to strengthen the regulatory laws that guides the activities of churches. It's very, very important.
Oh, let's just
Not just churches, religious body.
Religious bodies.
Yes, religious body. Yeah, thank you for that correction. Religious body. Yeah, because it's not just either Christian, but also within the Muslim sector. So,
now, what can government do right now to cut these corruption perspectives from the religious sect? I know you've mentioned a few, but we can still add more. What can they do? You know, checkmate. Should they have like a monitoring committee? Or what can they do to cut across all of these religious organizations, or like say SEC?
Well, the Corporate Affairs Commission, I remember at some time ago, there was an amendment to the Act for the registration of NGOs, CSOs. That is one area because religious bodies are classified as associations somehow that when it comes to, I remember then when we wanted to open an account for an NGO, it was just 2 persons. But now if you want to do, all the names of people who appeared on the CAC document must be there. So when you get to the bank, they take your BVN, they take your fingerprints and all that. And so with that, they're able to link. But you see, in previous times, you have someone who is just a member of an association, but is able to move in money to finance certain purposes, but it's not seen. So this time around, it's not linked. So if funds come from that person in, you'll be able to trace to say, oh, okay, he's a member of this organization, he's a member of this organization. If he's actually supporting this organization to this tune, that means he knows what is happening in that organization.
Very true.
And when you now investigate that organization and see what they are doing, you'll be able to checkmate, oh, are they doing things right? What are the antecedents?
Hope it's not fraudulent.
Yes, so it's not fraudulent and all that. So these are part of it. But you see, it takes a whole lot of processes because we are in a very complicated country where bureaucracy affects a lot of, bureaucracy of government affects the speed with which things are done. So it becomes difficult for us to wake up overnight to see that, oh, we want to address this issue with religious body. Different cry will come from different angle. If the Corporate Affairs Commission comes tomorrow and says, oh, we want to regulate this, definitely, you know, let us will get to the National Assembly. The National Assembly will want to sit on the matter. You have the Public Complaints Commission. Complaint will go there. They will need to meet. Why they are meeting? Campaign is there. Before you know, there's one incidence of bomb blast or whatever, or a kidnapping. Meetings can be adjourned because of one issue. So all these processes causes delay in taking necessary action. And for me, I've always said it, those in politics, the time they give to the proper governance of the country is not more than 2 years. And so what you cannot achieve within that 2-year span that you have them, I'm very sure you will hardly get it. Because when they come in, they spend 6 months trying to settle with appeal court, Supreme Court, and they spend another 6 months again trying to rest, to consolidate. And when it is a year to, they start campaign. So they only have 2 years to actually give to proper governance. So coupled with the bureaucracy of the system, then you find out that that is why it's like government policies are very far in affecting the lives of the people.
And now with all of these things that are happening when it comes to money laundering that has to do with religious organizations, we cannot take away the fact that the youths are mostly involved in all of this when it comes to cyber crimes, corruption, and all of that. Of course, you know, the day workshop that had to do with this particular press briefing by the EFCC boss, he came out, talked about the religious bodies, and then brought youths who are part of the focus of this whole issue in quote. Now, how can our youths be orchestrated from the corruption epidemic in Nigeria? How can we just separate them from all of this? Because they're watching and they see all of these things. That is the fastest way to make money and to get rich quick. How can we ostracize our youths from all of this?
Number one, government must come up with deliberate policies that will keep the youth busy. Very, very important. I'm happy you asked that question because I've been within the youth sector where I worked for good 20 years, and I can tell you certain things. We must keep our youth busy, their minds and their hands very busy in the right direction. Number two, we'll begin to look at how do we improve power, because power is core for the sustenance of any business. Today, we hear a lot of youth empowerment programs, and you go and ask, what has that translated into? You give someone 300,000 naira today to say, go and start a business. He needs to pay for shop rent, and they're asking for 1 full year. So government policies needs to begin to tweak. The government needs to tweak on some of these policies, so that, like my friend in Ireland who wanted to rent an office, she just needed to pay 2 months and 1 year. 1 month. They call it security. We need to have such system in our country. And you say you are a youth with this, okay, you are entitled to have not somebody asking you to pay millions of naira that is not within your reach. So we need to address power. We need to get our youth busy. Insecurity has even complicated a lot of issues.
A lot of issues.
A lot of issues. Our leaders need to live up to what they preach.
Expectations.
Yes, of course. You wake up tomorrow, somebody is driving a car of 160 million, and you see someone from nowhere because he used to do Babalaye, stop the road, destroy a lot of vehicles for a politician, and they said they want to settle him. What is the settlement? Give him political appointments. When he gets there, they say they don't empower him. From there, he makes his money, contests for House of Assembly. The next thing, he's already in the House of Rep. So we now have illiterates or people who are not qualified leading the qualified. That is what you see. So you see that no matter the preaching we preach to the young people to say, look, stop shun corruption, we find out that basic fundamentals that will naturally make the young people not to be corrupt are not there. You don't need to preach on somebody to do the right thing when you have the right structure in place. So government needs to step up game, make life, let me use the word, let the poor breathe.
Let the poor breathe.
So we need to have policies that will allow people to breathe so that they will be alive to live meaningful development that will engage our youth. When we have companies that engage youth, I told you I was busy. So if I'm idle, then my mind must be subject to do something.
Of course, of course.
So you will be surprised. Despite the number of churches that we have today, evil is still increasing. They even go to church, take pastors and all that. Even within church member will kidnap himself or herself to siphon money from within their own religious sect and all that. So, and I saw a flyer, in the newspaper the other day, said some people that were caught said that they accept security jobs, accept cleaner, accept megats and all that, just for them to be able to hash their act.
Oh, wow. Thank you.
That's a complete failure of the system.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Lugard Okonebo. Of course, he is a development expert, and he has thrown more light when it comes to terror financing and also looking at tackling the source of money laundering. And thank you so much, Mr. Lugard, for being a part of Insight today. Well appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
And that's a wrap on the program on Insight today. Join me same time tomorrow. Hope you learned one or two and you were well informed when it comes to the issue of terror financing and, of course, the issue of tackling the source of money laundering. I am Jumai Manson. Thank you for being there. Good afternoon.